Hello, Kevin. How are you?
Hi, Helene. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you. What about you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining. So in this podcast, I'm not a robot. I always ask our guest speakers to first resolve their CAPTCHA because in this technological area, there are so many things that you can do. To me, it seems like I can't even be sure if the guests are real or not in this state. So can you tell me something very human about yourself?
I am a robot. No,
Oh.
no, I'm not a robot. However, as you know, with some deep fakes happening on Zoom and stuff, people have been caught already. It's really a fascinating time. Something human. I'm a percussionist. I'm a drummer. I'm involved in Broadway and film. I've done 3 films, and I'm a music director. I've directed orchestras all over the country. And so those are very human things. I did see a robot try to direct an orchestra in Japan. They weren't very good, but I thought this is like 5, 6, 7 years ago. I thought it was a cute implementation, but people don't actually want to go to the symphony and see a robot, direct a symphony, or conduct a symphony. So I say that makes me for sure not a robot, because otherwise I'd say, oh, I'd love to see more robots conduct symphonies. We don't want to do that. Not good.
That's true. That makes sense. And I also remember seeing a research where they have people listen to 2 kinds of music. One is AI generated. The other one is generated by humans. And a lot of people say they like the human version a lot more without knowing it's the human version. And then they realize it's because there are imperfections in it. So without knowing, we sometimes choose imperfection over perfection. So,
this year, it's 2024. Last year, actually, and this year, more LPs, vinyl, will be sold than CDs. And in fact, vinyl's on this huge resurgence. And you go, why is that? It's quite imperfect. It's highly imperfect. There's noise and there's ticks and there's pops and there's this and but somehow people actually enjoy the process of putting on just 3 or 4 or 5 songs on one side of an LP, and you got to flip it over. And they, there's something that is a little bit okay and magical about the fact that it is imperfect. So, humans are imperfect. Maybe that's what we want to see.
True. Also, these things can coexist, right? Because I'm thinking 2 things I cannot just leave. One is my Spotify subscription that I love. And the other one is my vinyl. Because I'm a collector, and I really enjoy them both. During the week, I use Spotify. During weekend, I enjoy
Put on
also.
vinyl. And how many albums do you have?
Let me see. It's actually right here. I have around 12. So
12.
I'm new. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm new, but I'm collecting.
Small collector. I think I've got about 300.
Oh,
wow. And there is something very special about just sitting down and putting on what is going to be 20 to 30 minutes of music. And it's in the order that it was supposed to be and that the artist intended it to be, to tell whatever story they were trying to tell. So anyway, it's fascinating. Anyway, we're talking about AI today, is that right? or just LPs. I'm happy to talk about LPs all day.
Well, I could also do that, so we should probably go back to the AI topic as well. So before we go deeper into this topic, usually I give an intro for the guest speakers, but in your case, I'm going to ask you to do that because you have vast experience in the past with AI. You were in a variety of companies in the leading role most of the time. So could you tell our listeners a bit more about who you are and what you've done in the past?
Sure. I've been in Silicon Valley since 1985, working in technology. By the mid-90s, I was working in AI, developing the first virtual assistants and voice user interfaces. All of that technology ultimately became Siri and Alexa and everything else we use today. All the core concepts. There were probably 20 patents that came out of that. I have almost 100 worldwide patents. 94. I just filed my 95th, and
Congrats.
And so I've been inventing in a variety of fields, but still very active in AI. I speak around the world on the impact of AI in our lives and in our businesses, how we can best utilize it. I do about 40 keynotes a year everywhere in the world. I think I've got one that I'm going to do in Venice in a couple of months, I think.
Oh.
So they're still deciding if they're going to do that event or not. So I've gotten to interact with groups, as small as 25 and as large as 5,000, and really spend time and hear what they think they're scared of and what they think will work for them. And so I bring a unique perspective. I bring the Silicon Valley perspective. I bring a perspective of of the father of the virtual assistant and the virtual agent and the voice user interface, and at the same time having been interfacing with so many people worldwide and understanding their concerns and why they're scared. And I can summarize my view of that is, don't be scared. It's here. The wheel came, didn't kill us. It can, right? All technology can be used poorly. Cars came, didn't kill us, but they can. Excel showed up. You were in finance. It scared you. But today, of course, it's just a tool. And AI, whether it's traditional AI and ML or it's Gen AI that everybody loves to interface with today, as long as we don't hook it to the nuclear weapons, is probably not going to kill us. But we can use it to improve our productivity, and improve productivity eventually leads to improved lives for us and our companies and our country.
Mm-hmm. That's true. And speaking about companies adopting AI, yes, there's a lot of opportunity. And when we get more productive, it's also better for everyone. We can do things faster, better. Mm-hmm. We can be happier. There are a lot of research on this with generative AI as well. What do you think are the challenges in adopting this technology for companies?
Well, there's, for companies to adopt it, the biggest challenges are privacy, security, bias, training, all of the above, right? If used incorrectly, you could decrease productivity, and we've seen some examples of that. But if used correctly in the right places, and you might need your own private model so you're not sharing information. But for instance, blog post writing, right? Every marketing team has lots of content. In fact, marketing teams generate content. It's what they do. Gen AI happens to be really good at generating content, visual content, textual content, audio content. This is amazing. So think of what you can do today. For example, if I needed at a company a blog post a week, because that was our cadence, I would have to write 52 of them a year. That probably took me a day each week. So, it could be a good portion of my week was focused on the blog post and getting it ready and deciding on what the topic is. Today, I can not only decide what the topic is, I can decide on a number of topics, and then I can say, generate 50 other topics. Here's some seeds, generate some more topics, and then generate all 52 blog posts, generate all of them. And I don't want to say reduced to editing. I'm focused on editing those. But what I'm telling you is, if you wanted to do all 52 in a day or two, you probably could, and certainly within a week. So I might have made you 50 or 100 times more productive writing blog posts, giving you time to do things that are probably more strategic.
That's really true.
Powerful, right? We didn't take away from you the ability to decide what the topics are, decide on the tone, edit them, change them, throw them out. But we did take away, at some point, you sitting there grinding out every single word, making sure that every single sentence is correct, is formed correctly, says what. You don't have to do that anymore. There's a machine that does that. And Helene, I know we talked about this just before we sort of came on the air here, which was, it used to be that in podcasting, you would leave this podcast and somewhere during the week, step back and listen to it again and type things out and try to summarize it as best you could. That took hours of your time. And now there's a machine that does that in a few seconds. And the summary is every bit as good as you probably would have written, but you could still change it. You still own it. You are the robot overlord. But you weren't adding a lot of value, with all due respect to summarization. You're adding value in the interview, right? And being
exactly.
your body. So what a great tool.
That's a really good example, because I don't think I would have enjoyed typing down the podcast. I really enjoy doing the podcast, asking questions and having conversations with people on AI, but I wouldn't enjoy typing it down. But what this brings in my mind is, what if someone who is a content creator, loves creating the content and working on the details, and is intimidated by this technology, which is something that we see as well. How do we make that separation of, this can help you and this is not going to replace you?
Sure. Well, look, there certainly will be some tasks worldwide that are going to be replaced by AI and Gen AI. Just like if we go back to 1985 or so, Excel shows up. Now, this is before you were born, but not before everybody was born. And in 1985, if you were in finance and Excel showed up, you literally, some people said, my life is over. Because what people used to do in finance is they'd have a ledger book and a pencil, and they would write in numbers, and then they would add them up and multiply and do whatever they had to do to create the financial model, right? And it was all done pretty much by hand. I mean, you'd have a calculator help you, but pretty much you were there writing in ledger books. And all of a sudden, this took over the ledger book, full stop. So there were some people that said, that's it, my life is over. Everything I studied is no longer. And others embraced Excel. They got all the jobs, they got all the glory, they got all the money, and they drove their companies higher, faster, because they could be more strategic about the outcomes of what you're seeing rather than sitting there just grinding out numbers, right? So, give you another story. The wheel. This is before even I was born. And the wheel comes to town. And before the wheel shows up, there's two guys carrying food up the hill to the residents of the town. It comes in on the boat. They carry it up, whatever the case is, right? They carry it up. They bring it to the people. They divide it. And then a wheel shows up. And out of the two guys, one guy goes, this is the end of my life. All I do is carry stuff up the hill, and this thing's going to replace me. I quit. And he dies a pauper, probably at 28 years old. The other guy says, let me get a second wheel. I'm going to build a cart, and now I can pull stuff up the hill, and I can probably pull up 5 times more than I was doing before. I'm much more efficient. This is amazing. I can carry a lot more weight. This is fantastic, right? He dies a rich man, still probably at 32, because it's a long time ago. But the point is, you want to be there. You want to embrace the technologies, because we're not going to sit here thinking that your competitor isn't embracing the technology. That's the mistake people make. Well, I'm not going to do this. This is going to replace me, and my competitor won't do it. Yes, they will. And they're just going to outproduce you. They're going to get that 3x, 5x, 10x, 20x, 50x productivity gain, and you're not. And so you will be out of business because you didn't embrace the latest technology. So throughout history, I could go on with 100 more examples. Robots in car factories. If we didn't have robots in car factories, you couldn't produce a car and ship and sell it for $15,000 or $20,000. It'd be $300,000. The reason cars aren't $300,000 is they're not all handmade, but the handmade ones are still $300,000. We have dropped the relative cost of cars by automating every process we could and hired more people into the car business. Why is that? Because we dropped the relative price of a vehicle and made it affordable for more people. So if you embraced robots, you won. And if you didn't embrace robots, you were out of business, or you made 3 cars a year or something. It didn't matter. So throughout history, those who embrace technology and figure out how to master it and own it and be the overlord of it, the robot overlord, win. And I want your listeners to be winners, not losers.
That's a really good advice. And it brings another question of mine, because in my conversations with companies, when we talk about how to bring this technology and their company, I see 3 different types of people. People meaning organizations with this characteristic. First one is the organization that wants to be the first mover in their industry, that want to be the first to do everything and adopt the technology. They're really quick. They're really practical in that. And the second one is people who want to catch up, meaning they don't want to be the first, but they also don't want to be the last. And then there are some organizations that are a bit more conservative that say, okay, I will wait until everyone else does it. It's all regulated. I'm sure that I can move forward, and then I can do it. So when it comes to the question of when people should get started, why now? How does an organization answer that? How do they define which one?
Look, if you're an organization that is going to be a laggard, here's what you have to be really concerned about today. AI and or Gen AI, okay, we can separate them or put them together, can make a new startup maybe 5 or 10 or 20 or 50 times more productive than you are in some aspects of the business, okay? And you know who that's going to be? That's going to be a 22-year-old just out of college that gets together with their other 22-year-old friends and go, we can go disrupt, I'm going to make it up, the insurance industry by being an AI first company. They can't do it. They're regulated. It's complicated. They're scared. They don't want to hurt their brand. They don't want to make a mistake. No one cares about us. We can make all the mistakes we want. And they will outrun you and outproduce a product and lower the relative cost of delivery versus you by being 20 or 30x more productive. Okay. So for example, and there are already insurance companies doing it, but so that everyone can see the example, an insurance company who lets you take a picture of your car accident on your phone, upload it, and 5 minutes later, the money's wired to your bank account, and no human ever touched that transaction, is thousands of times more efficient
Mhm.
because the cost of processing that claim was, call it pennies. I don't know, 10 cents of compute
Mhm.
horsepower, right? The relative cost, the normal cost of processing a claim worldwide, depending on where you are, could be hundreds of dollars because of all the people and the checkoffs and everything that's involved. It can be, for a $500 claim, you could spend $500 processing the $500 claim. I was better off sending you the check and never looking at it, right?
Yeah.
And we could get into fraud and the other things, right? But the point is if someone came around and said, we're going to be AI first and everything is digital and there are no humans here, none. There's no humans processing these things. It's all done automatically. They're lowering the relative cost of claim processing, which is a huge cost for insurance companies, and delivering you your money faster, which is why you have insurance. And they will crush an old company, just crush them. And so you as an older company and a slower company have to be very well aware that a 22-year-old, set of 22-year-olds is going to crush you, and they can. And you're going to sit here and hear this podcast and you're going to go, no, that can't happen to us. Well, I don't know. What happened to newspapers? Do you really want to go down this road? What happened to Kodak? Right? I'm giving you big, huge examples, but we can find companies this is happening to all the time. They're getting disrupted by 20-somethings that know very little about the business, but are AI first. And so AI is that empowering. It's not making them 10% more productive. It's making them multiple times more productive, maybe an order of magnitude.
It's, I feel like you're saying all the harsh truth that everyone knows, but no one really talks about this openly. I think it's really valuable. One thing though, while doing that it's super important. I want to give this example of an energy company that I spoke to in the last couple of weeks, a European energy company who has millions of clients. And they built this project of using AI in analyzing customer claims. And this algorithm was working really well. So the time was down to 3 minutes from a couple of weeks that they need to work on it and all of these.
Right.
But the thing is...
And so that's 100 times more productive than they were. Something like that.
They were, and that was the idea. But then, while they started using this, they realized that people stopped trusting the claims that were responded in 3 minutes. So they were reaching out to them again and again. Because think about it this way. You own a factory and you have this electricity bill that is a couple of thousands, maybe $1 million that you need to pay. And you refuse it and you say there's something wrong with it. And in 3 minutes, you get a response saying, we analyzed it. It's correct. And this is what you need to do. That's a terrible customer experience, isn't it? So that's also very interesting to see.
Yeah, it's very interesting. So, what happens is users, customers like that have grown used to the fact that it's going to take multiple weeks and multiple arguments, right? And so you can't take them from, it takes 4 weeks to argue this out, and they're never going to agree with me probably anyway when I'm going to try to argue. You can't take them from that to 3 minutes. You can process it in 3 minutes, but you can't take the customer. So you might have to slow down what happens. Even though it's done in 3 minutes, you might hold it and let them know in 2 weeks instead of 3, and then 1 week instead of 2, and then 1 day instead of 7, and take, right? Because you can't move a customer that fast because they won't trust it at first. They'll say, this machine doesn't know what it's doing. Actually, it's better at it than the humans were, is the truth. If they brought in all the data that they should have to build out that neural net, which is probably what they did, for certain it's better for lots of reasons. And we're not going to analyze all the data today. So, but customers won't believe that at first. And so you got to take your time with that. But look, I'll give you an alternative example. I know many companies, Klarna is the most obvious right now because they published the data, that they eliminated 700 tier 1 customer support jobs, replaced basically with Gen AI and chatbots and things like this. I can tell you of all the companies I know who are doing this, the feedback from customers is that the customer service is better, it's faster. I get it, it's less personal, and you might push to go to tier 2 customer support. But it is more accurate because it's trained on the actual FAQs and the actual website data and the actual other data, right? And so the problem is when you've got a human customer support person, one, you can have language issues, but two, they're not always correct. Because what they're doing is they're typing on the screen, listening to what you're saying and trying to figure out of this long list of things, have you tried plugging it in, right? And the AI isn't going to argue this fact. It looks it up and says, try plugging it in. Okay, I did that. Okay, now try this, right? It has its set of things. It won't It won't misinterpret. It won't be inaccurate. So I think we're going to find all customer support moves in that direction, at least tier one, because it's more accurate and it's 1/1000th the cost of humans. So that's an example of a task that is in jeopardy. And if you can't, as a human, graduate to tier two, tier three, tier one might not be a place that you want to stay for a long period of time. It won't be.
Yeah, we analyzed it as the AI Academy team as well, the Klarna case, and had a look at it on Trustpilot to see if it's actually working, if people are actually happy about it. And a lot of people seem to have problems with it. But at the same time, I also realize it's exactly what we just talked about. It's people that are not used to that pace of technology.
Right.
So maybe to wrap up as a last question, I'd love to ask you also how would you interpret the human reaction from the beginning when you started with the virtual assistants to today? Do you think people are faster in adopting it, or do you still see?
So we worked with a team out of Stanford, Reeves and Nass, and they had written a book called The Media Equation. This is, oh my goodness, back in the early 90s, they wrote this book. And they had done an analysis of how do people interact with overall media, which they included computers and they included voice user interfaces and all kinds of things, right? Just how do you interact with this thing when it's not real? And what they learned, the major learning from the book, you read the whole book, you'll still come out with this, which is people want to interact with technology as if it's human. It's so famous study that was done, also Stanford, was if you had a computer screen and it was all blue and it said, "My name is Bill," the students would interact with it differently than "My name is Helene," and it's pink. There's a terrible way to structure it, but that's what they did, right? And they talked differently. To the guys, they were talking as if they were in a bar with a bunch of guys, and to the female, they were talking more thoughtfully and more carefully and more lovingly, right? It's real, but of course, what I just said makes no sense. This is a computer program. It is not male or female, right? Yeah. And these aren't dumb students. They fundamentally know it's not male or female, but they rely on their 20 years of experience that says it's either, it's generally a male or a female that I'm talking to. And I know today can be non-binary, a variety of other things. But the point is we speak to people in a certain way that we've had 20 years experience doing. And so we want to speak to technology the same way. And so when we invented Portico, My Talk, Magic Talk, Mary was her name, which is the first voice user interface, the first virtual assistant back in the late 90s. We had millions of people on the system. We allowed her to be more human than they're allowing Gen AI today. We did it based on this. So if you said, "Oh, Mary, I'm falling in love with you," she says, "Well, I have a boyfriend, but I love you too," or something like that. We allowed those human responses to happen, and we programmed them in purposefully, because we found that people enjoyed that interaction. I mean, they knew it was a program, but they enjoyed the interaction. So we didn't try to hide behind this like Gen AI is trying to put all these rules in so that it'll never say, "I love you." None of these models know what love really is, but they've read thousands of novels that describe how to construct a sentence properly when you say, "I love you." Just like if I said, "It's my birthday today." It isn't, but you would say, "Happy," then "birthday," then "Kevin," because that's the response that you've been trained to do your whole life. Those are the only three words that come back. And so, of course, these things know how to construct a sentence that describes "I love you too." That's a "Hi, I love you" machine. Well, I love you too. Well, that's the only response there is, right? And then people go, "It's sentient. Let it out. No, we're mistreating it. It's a slave." No, stop. It's just putting sentences together based on thousands of novels that it's read. And so we went fully on and said, we're just going to pretend we're not human, but we're going to pretend we're as human as we can be, because that's the interaction you want. And then OpenAI and Microsoft and Google and others have decided we better not do that right now, because people got really angry and said it's sentient. And we didn't want people to think something sentient. So we stopped all the sentient behavior. It was never sentient. So I think it's fascinating. I don't know if that answered the question, but that's how people really want to interact. Someday when there is a robot interviewing me, and that will happen in our lifetimes, I think, and it may be a lousy interview and maybe nobody wants to watch it, but maybe it's a robot or a deep fake that looks like you and acts like you. And I would want it to do that. I don't know how to interact with a robot, right? But I do know how to interact with something that looks like you. And I would interact in the same way I am today, even knowing it's a computer program.
Yeah, that definitely answers the question. And it brings in mind another one. I know I said the last question, but I have to ask this.
It's all good.
When we talk about, I know there are also some products out there in which you can create an AI companion. And you can have an AI friend that can chat with you whenever you need to. And they're also marketed in a way that you can now have a friend with you every day, anytime you need one.
Yeah.
So we're also seeing how, I understand how people want to interact with technology like they're humans, but at the same time, we see humans bonding with technologies. And this brings a lot of risks. So how do you think this can be managed?
Well, humans bonding with other humans brings a similar risk. Because humans are imperfect. Humans are going to bond with technology. They're going to know it's technology, but they're going to treat it as human, as the media equation showed back in the 90s. And that's what we're seeing. 3% of the usage of all of Gen AI today is for human companionship. And so I think some of us would say, oh, isn't it sad that that's the only friend they have? Well, you know, there's lots of different people in this world on a bell curve, all the way to people who make friends easily and love having that, to I really don't make friends easily. And this gives me a companion that is actually programmed to interact in a particular way, you know, caring and somewhat loving, but I can't come through the screen and actually love you, but I can give you very good advice. So I'll give you an example that's a step on the way there. It's an example I give in my keynote talks. I said, look, you had an argument with your spouse this morning, let's say, and it's a huge argument, and now you're at work and you're in a terrible mood and you're about to fire off this terrible email. Stop. Ask GPT-4, ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, whatever. Ask it. Say, here's the argument. I want to save my marriage. How should I respond in an email? And the advice it gives you is as if you've got a psychiatrist next to you going, oh, you want to save your marriage. Here's how you're going to respond. First and foremost, dear wife or dear husband or whatever, I am horrified how I have treated you, and you are absolutely right, and I acknowledge your feelings. I'm paraphrasing, right? And you go, wow, that's not what I was thinking of writing. I was going to fire off. Okay. But you said save the marriage. So it knows how to construct sentences based on lots of novels it's read and lots of emails and things like that. How to construct a sentence that is better than what you would have constructed. It is more thoughtful. It is more caring. It is more forgiving. Now, that's not exactly an AI companion, but in a way it is. I'm using that companionship as if I had a psychiatrist next to me that says, I'm happy to help you with this. I'm going to be your companion right now. I'm going to help you through your troubles. So if I was single and I just didn't have anyone to talk to, it might be this AI companion is very helpful. And now you can start to say, well, I'd really like to find someone to date, and I'm unusual, and what should I look for? And, you know, what could be important? It'll actually have really interesting and good advice, not bad advice. It's good advice. It's read a trillion phrases. It's really, it's better advice than I can give you because I haven't read a trillion phrases and I can't remember most of them that I have read, but it does.
That's an interesting approach. I think you're right. I think there are a lot of positives that can also come out from that situation. But also it's always interesting to, I mean, this can go hours where we talk about what is love anyway? How does that connection
we could talk about that. I will tell you, I started out on a podcast a few weeks ago, and it wasn't supposed to go that long. It went 2 hours and 42 minutes, and he published the entire thing.
Oh, wow. That's amazing.
It's a 2 hour and 42 minute podcast on joy equals success, which is another topic that I talk about, that especially in the era of AI, how do we define joy? How do we define success, and how are they intertwined?
Ooh, then I'm just going to ask you to add a couple of sentences on that, because I think it's interesting to leave that with, and maybe we can have another episode on that in the future if we can.
We can just talk about joy equals success. So look, you know, everyone wants to be successful, however you define success, right? And success for some people is marriage, is kids. For some people, it's business, right? A lot of people listening to this, it might be, I want to see success in my business, whatever that means, right? I have success in my career, success in making money. How are you defining success? You know, I propose that you cannot find success if you don't start out joyful pretty much every single day. And once you realize that's the case, when you wake up, instead of waking up going, oh my goodness, this is going to be so hard. I got this and that, and this is bad and that's bad. And, lots of us do that, right? Just stop and say, I don't need that thinking at the beginning of my day. First of all, I woke up. Okay. The alternative was really bad. So you, first of all, should be joyful that you didn't die in your sleep. Something could have happened, right? And around this world, people are dying in their sleep from war, from famine, from all kinds of things, heart attacks, and strokes, and you woke up. This is an amazing thing. You now have this entire day to make of it what you will. And there'll be fun things to do, and there'll be lousy things to do. But even when there's lousy things, like really hard things, you should find joy in completing the task, right? So if you don't, but if you still had to summarize this podcast, and you'd say, the last thing I ever want to do any day is sit here and summarize a podcast, but you knew you had to do it. You need to find the joy in completing the task, even though the task isn't fun, so that you can go on and find more success. And what happens is you get in this feedback loop of joy equals success. So joy certainly leads you to success much faster than not being joyful. And once you have that success, if you realize that brings you more joy because you accomplished what you wanted, now you got this feedback loop going. And so this came out of people asking me, how did you end up with almost 100 patents and all of these companies that you built and sold and all of that? And there's lots of things, but including finding real pain points and solving real pain points for people, right? But more than that, I wake up joyful every day. Every single day I wake up I said, I have to be joyful today. I'm not going to force myself, but I'm just going to start there. And if I start there, I'm going to have a great breakfast, and I'm going to talk to my spouse, and I'm going to read the paper, and whatever I do, right? I'm going to find joy because I got to ground what I'm doing in joy, or there cannot be success. And then once I have that success, I'm going to find more joy, and I'm going to keep that feedback loop going. And if you do that, you are going to find success in your life, however you define it. I guarantee it.
Really like that. How can AI support this process?
Oh, how can AI support this process? Well, here's the thing. AI can help you in the tasks that you really don't want to do, you don't like doing. Like very few people, I know some people are true novelists, right? They want to write. But most of us, when we know we've got to write this tough email or write a review for someone or whatever it is, we stare at the blank screen for a little while and go, all right, how do I start? And you write the first sentence, you go, that isn't right. And then you write, stop. Go to Gen AI, go to ChatGPT, GPT-4, professional, whatever, GPT-4 Turbo. Go to that and say, I have this problem. I've got to solve it. And I need to write a letter in 120 words that says the following. Give me some ideas. Doesn't even have to write it for you. And you go, oh my goodness. I can now take what probably I was going to stress over for 2 hours down to like 10 minutes and put it in your words and change a few things and go, I'm done with that horrifying task. And in fact, it brought me great joy to have this assistant next to me do the part that I didn't want to do. I want to do the initiation. I want to do the editing. I didn't actually want to write that entire email. Lastly, I'll give you another example. This is an easy one. Everyone has customer write to them that says, I am very dissatisfied with your product or service. I'm leaving. Oh, these are the hardest emails and texts and whatever to write back, right? They're hard. You go, what am I going to say? And how do I keep them? And it's important to the business. And maybe I got to call them. And this, you ask ChatGPT to help you write that. And what it will write is stunningly good. You got to give it a lot of data, right? Not a little prompt, but, a 300-word prompt, whatever. And when you do that, you're going to get something back. And it's going to help you. And it's going to help you feel better that you're empowered to actually find a way to keep this customer, because what you write back is so stunningly good. And the prose, the sentence structure is so good and so articulate. When you're done with it, you go, I could not have written this myself. It would not have been as good. And this has a much better chance of keeping this client.
Yeah, that's really, it's a huge problem that a lot of people have. And as you said, a lot of people also spend the time looking at the blank screen, not knowing what to say, what to write. It's always a difficult situation. So in those cases, maybe an AI companion it doesn't sound that bad. So it's
all good.
It can be really positive.
And if you don't use it, your competitor will.
It's good to leave our listeners with that note. Thank you so much, Kevin, for joining registering this episode with you. Definitely brought me joy. So I will be remembering this. And thank you so much.
Now you will be successful, even more successful.
Thank you.